Let's talk about fiction. And so we need a theme. We need to go to someplace outside this bunker in Moscow. We need to go to someplace outside the United States, someplace so outside that it is outside the universe, perhaps. It's time for the Outer Limits Control Voice and Fiction Friday. Thanks for being here.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right. Excellent. By the way, I did not get to touch upon the Ukraine connection to the attempted coup in Mali. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. Let's dig into some fun, some fiction, and some great wordsmithing. As we mentioned earlier in the program, fellow conspirators, and by the way, if you're just joining us and you're wondering, why is he mentioning that term? If you're just joining us on the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, and you're like, hey, didn't that guy work for some Star Trek Voyager stuff or at the Outer Limits? Yeah, I was at both shows. And I also am a pretty hardcore libertarian, so I do political work and economic work and lecture in political economics when I'm healthy. And I do fiction writing since I've left Los Angeles with novels and short stories and stuff like that. So I like to read stories on Liberty Conspiracy, our Monday through Friday program, because freedom is out of fashion. We get together with fellow conspirators and plot and plan for future days of freedom. So if you want to join us over there and you're watching on the entertainment side, feel free to hang out on Rumble, the Liberty Conspiracy channel on Rumble, and my X, we stream there as well, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's at Guard Goldsmith. So thanks for hanging out, everybody, and let's talk some fiction right now. We didn't get to do Wordsmith Wednesday this week, and one of the authors I wanted to mention over the next couple months, I decided to bring in tonight, and that's Guy de Maupassant. And Guy, he and I, we go way back, sometimes pronounced Guy, like Gaia, is actually the name of Henri-René Albert Guy de Maupassant. And of course, he was an acolyte of Gustave Flaubert. So that is somebody with some pretty good taste. Though through Flaubert, de Maupassant befriended the Russian novelists Ivan Turgenev and Emile Zola, as well as many of the protagonists of the realistic school. So he was born in 1850, and you can find some of this information obviously coming from Fantastic Fiction, but there's other information out there. You can sort of build a nice little bio about these guys. I like to build these bios, and I'm going to put many of these bios into the paid side over at my Substack in case anybody wants to build a sort of fiction library and some of these folks that we've had, and you can want to connect to the audio stories that we have as you're driving around or whatever. So Guy de Maupassant was a big fan of Emile Zola, and in 1880, he published his first masterpiece, Boulet de Suif, which met with an instant and tremendous success. Flaubert characterized it as a masterpiece that will remain. Pretty good, and with good cause. De Maupassant's tales, whether they are tales of war and brutality, like Mademoiselle Fifi and Boulet de Suif, or tales of the human heart like Yvette, many people know that one, speak to a window in the human soul that few can see and fewer still can speak to. So he was born in 1850 and died in 1893. Guy de Maupassant. Now, I've got a very short story by him that I'd like to share with you, coming from a book, and I honestly don't even know where or how I found this book, but I was just looking at it, and I'm like, I kind of like it's really solid, really heavy. Sometimes you get a book, you're like, I don't think this was meant to be like a keepsake hardcover special thing, but it's pretty, and it's not the greatest design either, but there's just something about it that I kind of dig. So here it is. It's called Supernatural Short Stories. It's published by a company called Sirius, and it was put out. You can see the cover there, right? And you can see the inside cover is pretty interesting too. So it's sort of like ink blot meets woman at the window meets eye looking through the window meets sort of like bat shapes and stuff like that. And this book was published in, let's see if I can find it here, by Sirius in 2019. Okay, 2019. It's got great stuff. F. Marion Crawford. I think, let me see. I think, is E.F. Benson in this? Of course, I edited a book of short stories collections for, E.F. Benson, M.R. James, Bram Stoker's Dracula's Guest is in here. Arthur Macken's The White People is in here. J. Sheridan Le Fanu. A couple people I don't even know a couple of these guys, but want to show you this story by Guy de Maupassant. Written, again, he only lived for 43 years, 1850 to 1893, Guy de Maupassant. This also, by the way, has the yellow wallpaper in it by Charlotte Perkins, which we read 2 weeks ago. And it has The Vampire, which is considered to be the first ever vampire story by Polidori. But let's go with Guy de Maupassant. And this is a story called A Mother of Monsters. So we turn to page 106, and I will get ready to read to you what hopefully will be a good reading for a Friday for you, or perhaps it's Saturday morning already. And here it is. A Mother of Monsters by Guy de Maupassant. I recalled this horrible story, the events of which occurred long ago, and this horrible woman the other day at a fashionable seaside resort, where I saw on the beach a well-known young, elegant, and charming Parisienne, adored and respected by everyone. I had been invited by a friend to pay him a visit in a little provincial town. He took me about in all directions to do the honors of the place, showing me noted scenes, chateaux, industries, ruins. He pointed out monuments, churches, old carved doorways, enormous or distorted trees, the oak of St. Andrew and the yew tree of Roquebois. When I had exhausted my admiration and enthusiasm over all the sights, my friend said with a distressed expression on his face that there was nothing left to look at. I breathed freely. I would now be able to rest under the shade of the trees. But all at once, he uttered an exclamation. "Oh, yes! We have the Mother of Monsters! I must take you to see her." "Who is that, the Mother of Monsters?" I asked. "She is an abominable woman," he replied. "A regular demon. A being who voluntarily brings into the world deformed, hideous, frightful children, monstrosities, in fact, and then sells them to showmen who exhibit such things. These exploiters of freaks come from time to find out if she has any fresh monstrosity, and if it meets with their approval, They carry it away with them, paying the mother a compensation. She has 11 of this description. She is rich. You think I am joking, romancing, exaggerating? No, my friend, I am telling you the truth, the exact truth. Let us go and see this woman. Then I will tell you her history. He took me into one of the suburbs. The woman lived in a pretty little house by the side of the road. It was attractive and well kept. The garden was filled with fragrant flowers. One might have supposed it to be the residence of a retired lawyer. A maid ushered us into a sort of little country parlor, and the wretch appeared. She was about 40. She was a tall, big woman with hard features, but well-formed, vigorous, and healthy, the true type of a robust peasant woman, half animal and half woman. She was aware of her reputation and received everyone with a humility that smacked of hatred. "What do you gentlemen wish?" she asked. "They tell me that your last child is just like an ordinary child, that he does not resemble his brothers at all," replied my friend. "I wanted to be sure of that. Is it true?" She cast on us a malicious and furious look as she said, "Oh, no, my poor sir. He is perhaps even uglier than the rest. I have no luck, no luck. They are all like that. It is heartbreaking. How can the good God be so hard on a poor woman who is all alone in the world? How can he?" She spoke hurriedly, with eyes cast down, with a deprecating air, as if a wild beast who is afraid. Her harsh voice became soft, and it seemed strange to hear those tearful falsetto tones issuing from that big, bony frame of unusual strength, and with such coarse outlines, which seemed fitted more for violent action, and made more for the utter howls of like a wolf. "We should like to see your little one," said my friend. I fancied she colored up. I may have been deceived. After a few moments of silence, she said in a louder tone, "What good will that do?" "Why do you not wish to show it to us?" replied my friend. "There are many people to whom you will show it. You know whom I mean." She gave a start and resumed her more natural voice, and giving free play to her anger, she called out loudly, "Was that why you came here? To insult me? Because my children are like animals? Tell me. You shall not see them. Oh, no, you shall not see them. Go away. I do not know why you all try to torment me like that." She walked over towards us, her hands on her hips. At the brutal tone of her voice, a sort of moaning, or rather a mewing, the lamentable cry of an idiot, came from the adjoining room. I shivered to the marrow of my bones, and we retreated before her. "Take care, devil!" They called her the devil, of course, and that, said by my friend, "Take care! Some day you will get yourself into trouble through this." She began to tremble, beside herself with fury, shaking her fist and roaring, "Be off with you! You will get me into trouble? Be off with you, miscreants!" She was about to attack us, but we fled, saddened at what we had seen. When we got outside, my friend actually looked sad. "Well, you have seen her. What do you think of her?" "Tell me the story of this brute," I replied. And this is what he told me as we walked along the white high road, with ripe crops on either side of it, which rippled like the sea in the light breeze that passed over them. This woman was a servant on a farm. She was an honest girl, steady and economical. She was never known to have an admirer, and never suspected of any frailty. But she went astray, as so many do. She found herself in trouble, and was tortured with fear and shame. Wishing to conceal her misfortune, she bound her body tightly with a corset of her own invention, made of boards and cord. The more she developed, the more she bound herself with this instrument of torture, suffering martyrdom, but brave in her sorrow, not allowing anyone to see or suspect anything. She maimed the little unbound being, cramping it with that frightful corset, and made a monster of it. Its head was squeezed and elongated to a point, and its large eyes seemed popping out of its head, its limbs exaggeratedly long and twisted like the stalk of a vine, terminated in fingers like the claws of a spider. Its trunk was tiny and round as a nut. The child was born in an open field, and when the weeders saw it, they fled away, screaming. And the report spread that she had given birth to a demon. From that time on, she was called the devil. She was driven from the farm and lived on charity under a cloud. She brought up the monster, whom she hated with a savage hatred, and would have strangled, perhaps, if the priest had not threatened her with arrest. One day, some traveling showmen heard about the frightful creature and asked to see it, so that if it pleased them, they might take it away. They were pleased and counted out 500 francs to the mother. At first, she had refused to let them see the little animal, as she was ashamed. And when she discovered it had a money value and that these people were anxious to get it, she began to haggle with them, raising her price with all a peasant's persistence. She made them draw up a paper in which they promised to pay her 400 francs a year besides, as though they had taken this deformity into their employ. Incited by the greed of gain, she continued to produce these phenomena so as to have an assured income, like a bourgeois. Some of them were long, some short, some like crabs, all bodies other than human bodies. Several died, and she was heartbroken. The law tried to interfere, but as they had no proof, they let her continue to produce the freaks. She has at this moment 11 alive, and they bring in, on an average, counting good and bad years, from 5,000 to 6,000 francs a year. One alone is not placed, the one she is unwilling to show us. But she will not keep it for long, for she is known to all the showmen in the world who come from time to time to see if she has anything new. She even gets bids from them when the monster is more valuable to one than another. My friend was silent. A profound disgust stirred in my heart, and a feeling of rage, of regret, to think that I had not strangled this brute when I had the opportunity. I had forgotten this story when I saw on the beach a fashionable resort the other day. An elegant, charming, dainty woman was there, surrounded by men who paid her respect as well as admiration. I was walking along the beach, arm in arm with a friend, the resident physician. And 10 minutes later, I saw a nursemaid with 3 children who were rolling in the sand. A pair of little crutches lay on the ground and touched my sympathy. And then I noticed that these 3 children were all deformed, humpbacked, or crooked, and hideous. These are the offspring of that charming woman you saw just now, said the doctor. I was filled with pity for her, as well as for them, and exclaimed, "Oh, the poor mother! How can she ever find a way to laugh?" "Do not pity her, my friend. Pity the poor children," replied the doctor. This is the consequence of preserving a slender figure up to the last. These little deformities were made by the corset. She knows very well that she is risking her life in this game. But what does she care, as long as she can be beautiful and have admirers? And then I recalled that other woman, the peasant, the devil, who sold her children, her monsters. That is A Mother of Monsters by Guy de Maupassant from the 1800s. And obviously makes me think of a story that we discussed yesterday about surrogate motherhood and the fact that, very strangely, through IVF, and if you're just joining me on former Star Trek writing fellow, this is from Liberty Conspiracy, but 2 Caucasian parents were a little surprised after they went through some IVF sessions, and the woman got pregnant, and the resulting finally born baby, while the other fertilized fetuses were in stasis, which is a very big ethical problem. He was of Polynesian descent. And so these people were a little surprised, and they're looking for their baby because this woman had that fetus implanted in her womb and carried that fetus to term and gave birth to other people's baby. They look like they have found the parents genetically, but it does raise a lot of questions all over the map. I wonder what Guy de Maupassant would think of that. Interesting. Now, I want to introduce you to one other piece before we go, and this is going to be for next week. I might have to do it in 2 parts. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the detective writer Ross MacDonald. Great, great stuff. Ross MacDonald, John D. MacDonald. So let me show you. Talked about Ross MacDonald before. I want to talk to you about John D. MacDonald. This is one of those mammoth best books, and they're just, they're inexpensive. They're like, 500 pages. They got tons of great stories in them. This is one called Finders Killers by John D. MacDonald. And you might be familiar with a lot of his detective stories. Great, great stuff from John D. MacDonald. This has stories in it by Donald Westlake, Dashiell Hammett, Robert Bloch, Harlan Ellison, Mickey Spillane, Bill Pronzini, Lawrence Bloch. Yeah. David Goodis is in here as well. Plus a couple other people I don't know. But this John D. MacDonald story, I just want to read you the opening of this and give you a sense of a fast-paced detective cop story that I think you'll find pretty cool. And it's called Finders Killers. Again, it's from the Mammoth Book of Pulp Fiction. This was published in, let's see, probably 1990 or so, based on this. 1996. Finders Killers by John D. MacDonald. We waited for him to run because that was the final proof of guilt that we needed. We had him bottled up in a Chicago apartment. Our boys drove the cabs, delivered the milk, cleaned the street in front, and in general, covered him like a big tent. I don't know exactly how we gave it away, but we did. We threw it to him. You can say we were careless. That's in the same league with Monday morning quarterbacking. Our excuse was that we didn't know he was tipped. He walked into the apartment house and never came out again. 3 hours later, when we took the wire and tape off the fat woman across the hall from where he had lived, we learned how he'd used that cold, dark, drizzly evening to good advantage. She was a tall woman and fat. We knew he wore size 10B shoes. Hers were 9A. He tapped at her door. He hit her so hard that she still remembers hearing the tapping, but she can't remember opening the door. Figuring the rest, well, that was easy. He merely undressed and wrapped his own clothes around his middle, tying them in place. Then he got into her clothes. He took a rain cape and a big floppy hat. Maybe he'd taken the precaution of shaving himself closely, maybe not. It was a dark night. He walked out. Aragon, holding the night glasses on the apartment door, didn't spot him. The boys in the cellar played back the recording of him going to bed. It was a sensitive pickup. I heard the shoes drop, the springs creak, the sleepy yawn. And that was the way Torun walked out on us. Walking out with $240,000 in brand new treasury notes in $500 denominations, all in serial sequence, most of it still in the mint wrappers. In addition, he had an estimated $25,000 in smaller bills, all used stuff. He had a lot of the bonds, too. Negotiable stuff. Very hot. Even if they just dumped out the bank guards without the holes in the backs of their heads, the bonds would have been hot. They had carried the guards across the Connecticut line before dumping them out, Torun and Holzer. We knew that much. We didn't have to worry about Holzer. Some kids on a picnic found Holzer 100 feet from the highway. The thigh had gone bad under the dirty bandage. There was a hole in the back of his head. The slug matched the ones taken from the two guards. There is not the slightest point in going over the history of how we located Torun. It was dull work. It took 7 months. Then we had him bottled. We still couldn't be certain that there wasn't a third party involved. So we watched him. I was the one who advised against moving in and grabbing him. Wait a little, I said. He'll either run some more or he'll have company. Either way, I thought, we couldn't lose. I'd been with it for 7 months. By painstaking spade work, I'd uncovered the initial lead that eventually led to him. I was a hero. So Torrin slipped away. So I was a bum. It took 3 days to prove we hadn't the faintest idea whether he had left town, and if so, how, or in what direction. Broughton called me in. His eyebrows, well, they look like white caterpillars. He looks like a deacon in the neighborhood watch. He's the Broughton who went into that New Orleans hotel room in 37. He expected one man to be in there. There was a slip. There were 4 of them. When it was over, Broughton was still standing up. The lead he was carrying didn't pull him down until he got back out into the hall. That's the Broughton we're talking about. Sit down, Gandy, he said. I sat. No excuses. So that is the start of the story called Finders Killers by John D. MacDonald. And I'll show you over at Fantastic Fiction if you're interested. Most people probably are aware of John MacDonald's work anyway. But, I mean, what a line of... it's interesting, too, because sometimes if you're not into a particular genre, it takes a while to discover these guys. That's why I was lucky to work at a bookstore, and I'd love to open my own bookstore if I get healthy enough just to do that. That would be fantastic. Like a used bookstore would be great, and right on the side. In fact, this story gave me an idea that I want to get to now already. Just as I was reading it, I have a full story idea complete. Yeah, I even had side characters. It's just that quick. I've got a whole story. Everything's all set. I know where it happens. I know the types of characters that are in it, and I know the twist. But let me show you. John D. MacDonald and his work. And I don't know if Finders Killers will be listed, but John D. MacDonald. There we go. So there's John D. MacDonald. Died in 1986. John D. MacDonald, born in Sharon, Pennsylvania, educated at the universities of Pennsylvania, Syracuse, and Harvard, where he took an MBA in 1939. After war service in the Far East, he wrote hundreds of stories for the pulps and over 70 novels, including the 21, you got it, in the Travis McGee sequence. And remember, they always had colors. The Deep Blue Goodbye, Nightmare in Pink, A Purple Place for Dying, which might be the most popular one, Purple Place for Dying. Look at that. All the way up to 1985, The Lonely Silver Rain. And he had a lot more. Weep for Me, I remember that one. Dead Low Tide, that was a big one. Now, some of these later, they were released posthumously. I think there were a couple of them they released after his death. Yeah, Barrier Island, 1986. So that was the last one. And that's part of that Murder Room series. And you can see a review from Stephen King, who usually has great taste about books. The great entertainer of our age and a mesmerizing storyteller. So that's John D. MacDonald. We used to have like an entire shelf of John D. MacDonald books at Annie's Bookstop when I worked there. And, they all had the different colors on them and stuff like that. Pretty cool stuff. And so check them out. And, of course, Ross MacDonald, but John D. MacDonald. Great stuff. And we'll read some of that story next week, maybe in 2 parts. I think that'll be fun. So did you like tonight's Guy de Maupassant? I hope you did. And, Birdhouse says, thank you. Thank you, Birdhouse. Birdhouse says, those are great picks for tonight, Guard. I'm going to have to re-listen to your former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel because I got sidetracked during your reading. Oh, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. Sharon P.A., did you hear of him, Bird? Oh, interesting. Are you from that area in Sharon? I don't know. And by the way, I want to mention to you that, yes, I am very, very close to the end of Fuel. I'll just read to you what I've got before I close things off. So last week we were talking about the spacemen landing on this asteroid being invited in so that they can get some of this fuel. And they are doing something that is not approved by the Corporation, which is this interplanetary corporation nation state. One guy, Johnson, much more interested in having had a career in it. The other guy, Nick, our narrator, not so much. Johnson got into it thinking he was going to have a career because he thought he was going to marry this girl. That fell through. So he's now reconsidering maybe he won't continue with the line. And they're doing something that seems to connect them to an asteroid where they have some of this fuel stored that they can get and basically, get away on their spaceship. And their freighter ship used to be called the Helena Howe, and it was manned by a different group of guys who seem also to have gone in this direction. And this is how they found the way to get to this place. So they've gone down in their spacesuits, and they are going in to the place, and they're trying to figure out whether they're going to be contacted by anybody, if it's all automated. How do they get this fuel? Which it's for their ships, they use this special fuel that isn't like the larger ships, which use nuclear fission. It's this stuff that they've been able to synthesize. Some guy made it years ago. And that basically allowed the expansion of the empire, of the space empire. So I said, then silence crept in. But it was an almost deceptive quiet, because hiding behind it, as if the whole asteroid were wired and buzzing with hyper-aware surveillance eyes and listening ears, an entire arena of onlookers blended with the rock and ice, while it seemed to be watching and listening. We're in it deep now, Johnson. Let's see this through. He nodded, and we partners, in it for the long haul, faced the unknown. However it shook out, we both understood that at least our kinship was unshakable. Our trust was all we had in this alien, unpredictable, and possibly deadly venture. I'd like to see some sign of how they conduct transactions, Nick, he said, as we took our first cautious boot steps forward. So they're inside this cave now, and the airlock is closed behind them, and it's lit by these rings. And perhaps the beckoning gullet, all adorned with those carnival lights, was designed to dampen sound. But what should have echoed down back from that slowly curving passage seemed to die, as if our exchanges were heavier than air, sinking to the rubble-littered floor at our feet. Wonder how stable this hideout is, he said. Again, his voice sounded flat and weak in comparison to the mass and command of the big space rock. Do you think they have stabilization boosters to avoid collisions with disruptive junk? This is in the asteroid belt. I suppose they'd have to move it back to the original coordinates or transmit new ones to the underground if they did that. Could be they use defensive missiles. Yeah, but that kind of kinetic hit might stand out from the others, the natural ones, if big enough, and if it let a big enough energy signal, well, the so-called authorities, they might detect it. We were approaching the curve in the tunnel, and I detected a drop in temperature. Either that or I was getting overheated from the stress. The airlock was far behind us, like another life, and the increase in my discomfort gave me pause. You okay? I nodded. They got to have something to show us soon, I said. We don't even know where we're going. No, sorry, he said. They got to have something to show us soon. We don't even know where we're going, I said. Our next steps rounding that curve brought us to a split personality in the passage. The tunnels remained lit by the rings, now colored deep crimson, almost burgundy on the left, and navy blue on the right. Okay. He looked back and forth at them, the colors playing on his angular face. I'm beginning to have second thoughts. If I were involved with a scheme like this, I'd offer some kind of signal to potential customers by this point, noted Johnson. But he looked around. I was even less patient. Like Some kind of signal. Yeah. A message calibrated for our wrist riders, maybe, or something here to see, like a screen or a voice, a friggin' radio message on our wavelength. My pulse rose. The heat in my veins and skin climbed with it. The damned air seemed colder and colder. I tried to see down both corridors. We don't even know how they deliver the neutro. Well, at least that should be pretty simple. The stuff is so full of potential antimatter energy, they usually package it in those 6-foot cartridges the corporation shows us in the training loops. A few of those will get us anywhere we want to go. I shook my head, wondering what to do. And we stood just inside the new angles. He on the right beneath the blue and me on the left in the red. It's getting cold, Johnson. He stepped further down the passage and moved into the red a few more steps. And though he was out of my sight, I could tell he was using his suit's glove lights to slice a few circles of illumination around the darker portions between the rings. So I followed his lead and tried to make out any sign of communication or a communication device ahead and around me. Hey! This time his voice did echo in the stillness. Well, for goodness sake! I strode back and around to join him. And in the white spotlights from his built-in wrist lamps, I saw that another large piece of what looked like duct tape was stuck to the wall. And on this was an arrow pointing deeper into the tunnel, and a message scrawled in ink from likely a wide tip marker. Take what you need, and we will show you what we expect for remuneration. We exchanged quizzical looks in the strange cast of our lights. Pretty trusting, I said. I wonder if Wilkerson wrote that. Johnson's telltale V returned to his forehead. He directed his light and his gaze down the tunnel, where the rings of blue illumination ended in what appeared to be some kind of distant, dull metal door. The door had a strange rectangular slit in it, through which a sharp white light escaped. Nick, something just came to mind. You think those guys from the Hell in a How disappeared completely? He blinked as he puzzled the strange mystery of that distant barrier. Do you think they returned to the hive? What do you mean? I asked. And we started to walk. Well, I was just thinking. Gentex can do amazing things nowadays. If the crew of the Hell in a How made enough in the black market, they could have paid for surgery or the RNA tweaks to get body and face reconstruction. If they had the cash, they could have taken on completely new IDs and woven back into the system. Maybe even become big players in the payoff world, and no one would ever know. I don't follow exactly. Well, did you ever hear of the Trust? I don't think so. Our boots made soft crunching sounds as they landed, reminding me that we were moving within a floating rock beneath tons of material, like miners in a hellish shaft back on Earth. It was the creation of Felix Dzerzhinsky, head of the Cheka, in the early days of the Soviet police state. Ostensibly, the group was a resistance alliance, recruiting Russians and dissidents who had escaped to England and wanted to fight Lenin and Stalin. Blue rings slid by. The door drew closer, as if it, rather than we, were moving. But the Cheka, Dzerzhinsky's secret police, was behind it all. And when they falsely had gathered the trust of a pretty sizable number of counter-revolutionaries, including Sidney Riley, the top Soviet dissident who spied for England, Dzerzhinsky pulled the trigger, literally, killing them all and many of their family members too. Okay, are you thinking, I'm just considering the possibility? I paused, and he did the same. That this is a trap, I said, actually run by the cops. And he nodded. And that's where we stand on fuel, which I think is coming out pretty well. I'm liking it. Let's see your responses, everybody. See what's going on. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Rock and roll. Oh, wow. How about that? Beltane Festival? Something darker. Okay, so we got, let me see. Down the line. Oh, yeah. So we have Birdhouse's comment. Those are great picks for tonight, Guard. Talk about Sharon P. How do I know Sharon, Pennsylvania? I don't know. Wilta Box. Talking about Ballantine beer. I don't know Ballantine beer. Oh, thanks, Will. Thanks. Effing rocking along. Love it. Keep it going, Guard, says Smuhosky. Thanks, Smoo. Dancing cat. Doing the cheers. GG. Yeah, rocking. Great regard. Thanks. I'm visualizing a mini movie. Thanks, Bronk. Yeah, that's what I would have written in a script, big time. And this is actually still going to be connected to all the other stories that I've been writing. So yeah. Thanks, man. I hope you dig it. And don't let me forget. Literally, don't forget. I read that story a while back called not Whitechapel. What was the story? Oh, Detritus Girl. I think it's one of the only stories I have that has more than one word for its title. And I literally was underneath the Brighton Pier in England with my camera when I thought of the story idea. And I usually have something to write on, and I didn't have anything to write on, but I had my camera and I knew I could take video. This is years ago. It was 2013, 2011, maybe. I don't even know. And so I just turned on the recorder and took some shots of the water washing up on the stones of the beach, of Brighton Beach, and recorded the story idea. And again, it comes pretty much when I think of a story, it's fully formed. And I know the end, and then I just reverse engineer it to make sure that I get to that point logically. And that's the way a lot of scriptwriters write stories too. Then you figure out the beats and everything and make sure everything fits together right. But yeah, I got a great new story, and that'll be a good one. But I have to get the time to do it, and it's difficult because, anyway, I won't go into it. We've spoken about it before. Have an awesome night, everybody. Have a great night, and thank you again. Hopefully you like my Wrath of Khan colors. Khan, that'll be great. I haven't met my son inside the Genesis cave or anything like that, but I hope everything's going great. I know Phil Collins was playing with Peter Gabriel. They got back together in the Genesis cave. Guard, May 1st, Beltane celebration. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's right. Beltane. I forgot about that. Yeah, and I was going to go through some of that Illuminati stuff for the forming of the Illuminati on 1776, May 1. But yeah. And it's interesting when you do the research of it, a lot of people poo-poo the whole, Illuminati connection to it. It's like, dude, it's very obvious. It's totally Gnostic. What are you talking about? It's ridiculous. It's so funny. And in a way, it's also the light bringer, very, very satanic as well. And it mixes in, obviously, the Celtic traditions, which get corrupted in certain ways. And then Christians don't like the Celtic traditions in some cases, but some cases they find it very important to be close to their heritage. And then you get the angles, and it's a very interesting European mix. That's for darn sure. Thanks, Guard. Great show. Thanks, X Sweet X. What a great handle. You got it. Illuminatus, the trilogy, right? I haven't read that. I got to check that out. So I'll hit the road. I'll leave you with some Outer Limits outro. And don't forget, if you want to find the shows, former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel on YouTube and on Rumble. And going out tomorrow will be the piece that we did last night for Theology Thursday, talking about anarcho-Christianity, Christian anarchism. And hopefully you'll find that interesting, the whole render unto Caesar. And I want to give a tip of the hat to my buddy who was in the chat yesterday, Queeg 1975. I think one of the movies he digs. And very cool. We'll compare scars some other time. But Yeah, he was in the chat, an old friend of mine for years and years and years, and we got to see each other a while back. Very, very good man on understanding the Bible and being curious about more. So thank you. And also, I want to thank, I won't mention who he was, but he made me a beautiful cross from a while back. He comes from Toronto. I don't know if he's watching tonight, but when he is in the chat, I want to thank him again for sending me that. That was very, very nice. In the mail. Wonderful stuff. And thanks, everybody. Have an awesome evening. We'll see you tomorrow for America Unplugged. And again, all the great people who are involved this week on the show, and your contributions mean so much. And almost made our goal. We were like within $10 last week. So that was really terrific of you. I appreciate it so much. And it is a very strange thing to do the intellectual busking and have a group of people and friends who are interested in this and sustaining this. So thanks. Cool shirt, G, says Will. Thanks, man. Thank you so much, guys. All right. Have a great night. And I'll tell you some stories later on with the map of Vancouver and what it was like living near the studio and where the studio was in Burnaby for the Outer Limits and stuff like that. And I'll show you some of the episodes during my season when I was there. And I'll mention some of the guys who were really nice guys, like Chris Dickey and those guys, Brad Wright, another nice guy. And of course, my friend Tom Tanisco, who wasn't an official writer. He was in the writer's room. And then he ended up, he had such good computer skills. He became a visual effects artist for that show. What was it? With Kevin Sorbo. Not Dragonfly. I can't even remember. But anyway, have a great night, everybody. Maybe I can get Tom on sometime. That'd be great. Andromeda. That's what it was. Andromeda. Like a great song by Paul Weller. All right, everybody. God bless. Thank you so much for your support. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
I'll return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.